You're about to discover the radical truth about identity shifting that will enable you to create the life you want to live. There's a lot of hype out there about identity shifting, probably because there are so many people on social media who claim they can teach you how to do it. But it always ends up just being some version of affirmations or fake it until you make it, which has never worked for me. And even if you believe it has worked for you, it's still not instant and it's not an identity shift. Honestly, have you ever created true and lasting change in your life by looking in the mirror and saying nice things to yourself, or by pretending to have and be something you know you're not? What you just saw was one of my coaching clients, Paul, experiencing a transformation. Real quick, I would just like to thank Paul for being brave enough to allow me to show pieces of this session. Thank you, Paul. I'll show you more about what led to his identity shift and how I facilitated it in a moment. But first, what is identity shifting anyway? It's a process of intentionally changing your self-concept, beliefs, and habits to align with the identity you want to become, and doing it in a way that leads to significant and lasting personal growth. An identity transformation goes beyond simple problem solving or symptom relief. When done correctly, it involves shifting how you perceive yourself, others, and the world around you, which leads to greater well-being, resilience, and fulfillment. It's also experiencing the freedom from being defined by your current circumstances, personality traits, or even emotions. Of all the changes you can make, an identity transformation is the most powerful because it literally transcends space and time. If you change a belief about something external, like money, for example, that change will only affect you when it comes to money and only at times when you're dealing with money. However, if you change a belief about yourself, like shifting into believing that you are a successful person, you will find success wherever you go and no matter what you do, and you will continue to do it consistently throughout your future. So the answer to creating the fulfilling life you want to live can only truly be found within your identity, and there's a breakthrough technology that can show you how to get there. More on that in a moment. Think about this. What if you're just one identity shift away from creating the ideal life you've always wanted to live? In other words, it's right there in front of you, but you don't know how to see it yet. Instead, you're looking in all of the wrong places because you don't know how to find it within yourself. Perhaps you've already done a lot of work on yourself, and life isn't bad, but you know it could be better. You want that extra edge. You know there's more potential in you, but you're just not sure how to tap into it. What if I could show you how to shift your identity whatever you want and with precise and predictable results? Sound too good to be true? I thought so too, until I met my mentor, the late Steve Andreas, who taught me how to transform my identity at will. Not only has this become the basis of my own personal development for the past decade, it's the basis for everything that I teach as well as how I coach my clients. The best part is that it doesn't take any special talent to do it, and it's something you can definitely learn. Before I explain how it works, it's important that you understand the magnitude of how your identity dictates your life, because the scary truth about this is that most people have a lot of negative beliefs about their identity that they're not even conscious of. For example, if instead of believing you're successful, you believe you are a failure, you will find failure wherever you go and no matter what you do, because you can't escape yourself. And if you believe that sometimes you're successful and sometimes you're not, your life will reflect that belief as well. What's even scarier is that most of your beliefs about your identity are so unconscious that you have no idea you're carrying them around, which means you can't change them even if you know how to, because you can't change what you're not aware of. You can either go through your entire life at the mercy of what you believe about yourself, beliefs that were haphazardly created by your unconscious, or you can make these beliefs conscious and then you can transform them, which will transform your identity into who you want to be. Imagine how this would change your life. I actually believed this about myself at one point in my life, that I was a failure, and you can imagine what kind of life that created for me. It was pretty bad, but all it took was a few transformations and my life did a complete 180-degree redirect. What I'm about to show you will get you started on your own transformational journey, and I'll provide you with an additional tool to direct your attention in the right place, so look out for that. The first understanding that you need to grasp in order for you to shift your identity is to realize that that the life you're living right now is not the result of living on a planet in an objective reality that provides you with some things and withholds other things from you. Instead, the life you're living right now is the result of who you are, your identity, which is a belief. Shift your identity and your reality shifts with it. Now, I'm not talking about moving literal mountains. However, metaphorically speaking, when you have a transformation, it will feel like mountains have moved. I'll come back to this a bit later. So what was happening for Paul in this video, and how did I coach him to shift his identity? I had to trick him.
You did say that quality that you felt most certain about was being empathetic. What is the evidence that you're an empathetic person? So what I'm getting at here is do you have examples in your life of being empathetic?
What I was looking for with Paul was to find a positive quality that he believed about himself and that he also liked, so that I could use it as a model for transforming and strengthening other qualities that he wanted to be true about himself, but that he didn't believe were, like being successful. But I ran into an invisible barrier that was preventing us from moving forward. It was perplexing at first, because it turned out that Paul was actually highly capable and had been a successful business owner in the past. But somehow he kept undermining his own success, and I kept trying to get to the bottom of it. It turned out that the quality he felt most certain about and that he liked about himself, being an empathetic person, was actually getting in his way. It's not that there's anything wrong with empathy. Empathetic is a wonderful quality, and the world would be a better place if people were more empathetic. But I noticed a crippling flaw in how Paul believed himself to be empathetic.
This is not easy. Everything I've ever done is just for somebody else.
Did you catch that? He gave me a clue about how he categorizes himself in relation to his empathy. Don't worry if you're not quite understanding it yet. I'll explain it as we go. For the next part, I needed him to start expanding his sense of empathy to include helping potential clients for his business. So instead of feeling like he was asking people to help him when he asked for their business, which made him feel very uncomfortable, we started shifting his belief that he's actually offering to help them with his services, which is congruent with his belief that he's an empathetic person who helps people.
Now, what about walking in the doors of these businesses, and you're walking into the businesses and that's what you're going to do? How can I help these people? And that's how you present yourself. I'm here to see if I can help you out.
That's very different. Oh, wow. Seems like it'd be so easy.
I could see that it was working, but I could also see that he wasn't quite there yet. There was one more thing that needed to happen for him to finally shift his identity. But because Paul is quite intelligent, I knew that in order to get him there, that I would have to fly below his radar. Sometimes working with very intelligent people is actually more difficult. A person who's very intelligent can often convince themselves, and even their coaches and therapists, of their limitations with very compelling arguments. And they're also very good at avoiding change by changing the subject or deflecting. After having had a few previous sessions with Paul, I knew that if I telegraphed what I was about to do, he would resist it. Since intelligent people are usually very logical as well, I leaned into this, asking questions that would lead him to the logical conclusion that I wanted him to, a logical conclusion that he could not deny.
So you like to help people?
Yeah.
And here's where it happens.
Because helping people out is important to you, are you a person as well?
Am I a person?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, so you're included in this equation. You're included in this equation.
Oh, interesting.
You're about helping people. That includes you too, because you're a person as well.
Feels real good.
Okay, good. Just breathe that in. Take a deep breath.
What exactly happened just then? Even though Paul believed that he's empathetic, there was a catch. He left out a crucial ingredient. Do you know what it is yet? If you do, pause the video and type it in the comments now. And when I read it, I will trust that you typed your comment before you watch the rest of this video to see if you're correct. What Paul suffered from is the same thing that people who believe they're undeserving suffer from. The most common one is when people believe they need to love themselves more because they don't love themselves enough. I'll make another video about this because it's such a common problem, and the common advice out there only makes the problem worse. In this situation, if I had just given Paul the typical advice he would have gotten from anyone else, like, bro, you deserve to love yourself, he would have rejected it. So I had to lead him through the identity shift without him realizing what was happening until it had already happened. Trying to convince him that he deserved his own help and empathy would have been a complete waste of time and effort. So I started by getting him to confirm for me that he is in fact an empathetic person because he likes to help people. The key word here is people. Then I asked him if he was also a person. He, of course, couldn't deny this. So I said, then you belong within your own empathy because you're a person too. If you like to help people and you're also a person, then helping yourself is automatic. That's when the identity shift happened. What was creating the problem was that Paul had left himself out of his own empathy. On one hand, he identified as being empathetic, which made him feel good about himself, but he also felt like he didn't deserve help and empathy. So he excluded himself from his own belief that he's empathetic, which is a logical fallacy. How can you say that you're an empathetic person because you like to help people except for one person in the entire world who also happens to be the source of the empathy? It doesn't make sense, but you're likely doing the same thing with some of your beliefs about who you are. Unfortunately, your unconscious is not as logical as we would like it to be, but you can change this. The reason this worked so fast and effectively is because I worked with him in the structure of his beliefs rather than the content like most coaches do. Instead of spending several sessions trying to convince him, I just had him integrate the two generalizations, being a person and being empathetic, and the transformation was instant, as you can see. If you want to end your suffering and overcome limiting beliefs so you can shift into the identity that will create the life you've always wanted to live, I've put a free resource in the description below this video to get you started. And if you're not interested in taking the time to learn this, and instead you would like to be led through identity shifts like I did with Paul, there's also a link down there as well that will give you more information about coaching. It's unfortunate, but so much unnecessary pain and suffering occurs simply because people create an imaginary separation within themselves, which denies their access to their very own wonderful qualities like love, compassion, and kindness. If this sounds familiar, then you probably also suffer from self-worth issues, because low self-worth is pain and suffering created by a false belief. If that's you, you're not alone. Most people suffer from this. So if you want to solve low self-worth, you definitely need to check out this next video.